Hello, everyone. What I'm about to tell you happened last summer, and I still get chills thinking about it. You know those memories from childhood that seem normal at first, but when you look back, something just feels off? Yeah, this is one of those stories. So, my parents decided to renovate our house, and they sent me to stay with my grandparents for 2 weeks. Now, I love my grandparents, don't get me wrong. They live in this huge old house that's been in our family for like 3 generations. You know the type, creaky floorboards, vintage furniture, and that weird old house smell that's somehow comforting and unsettling at the same time. The first few days were pretty normal. Grandma made her famous apple pie, Grandpa told his war stories, and I spent most of my time playing games on my phone. But then came the night of day 4. That's when things started getting weird. My grandparents had this guest room on the second floor, right at the end of the hallway. It was always locked because, according to Grandma, they didn't want dust getting everywhere. Makes sense, right? Well, that night, I woke up around 3 a.m., needing to use the bathroom. As I walked past the guest room, I swear I heard humming. Like this soft, gentle humming of a lullaby I couldn't quite place. I stopped and pressed my ear against the door. The humming got clearer and then it stopped. Complete silence. But just as I was about to walk away, I heard what sounded like small footsteps, like a child running across the room. Remember, this was a locked room. Nobody had been in there for years. The next morning at breakfast, I casually asked Grandma about the guest room. Her reaction? Guys, I've never seen her face change so quickly. She dropped her spoon and it clattered against her bowl. Grandpa suddenly got very interested in his newspaper. "We don't talk about that room," she said firmly. And that was that. But here's where it gets really messed up. That night, I couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I heard the humming again, but this time it wasn't coming from the guest room, it was coming from the hallway. I crept to my door and peeked out. There, in the darkness, I saw something that still haunts me. A small figure, maybe the size of a 6-year-old child, standing at the end of the hallway. It was too dark to see clearly, but it looked like they were wearing old-fashioned clothes, like from a black and white photograph. The figure slowly turned toward my door. I shut it as quietly as I could and jumped back into bed, my heart pounding. The humming got louder and louder until it was right outside my door. And then I heard the doorknob turning. I pulled my blanket over my head, yeah, I know, super mature, and lay there, barely breathing. The door opened. Footsteps entered my room. Small, light footsteps. They came closer to my bed, and then I felt something sit at the foot of my bed. The humming started again, but this time it was different. It was a lullaby I recognized.
Las noches, mi amor, duerme
The same one my grandmother used to sing to me when I was little. I lay there, frozen, for what felt like hours, until I finally fell asleep from sheer exhaustion. The next morning, I woke up to find a very old, very worn teddy bear sitting at the foot of my bed. When I showed it to my grandmother, she went pale. She recognized it. It had belonged to her little sister, who had died in that house when they were children. The sister, who used to sleep in the guest room, I spent the rest of my stay sleeping in my grandparents' room. Yeah, at 17, I slept in my grandparents' room. Before I left, my grandmother finally told me the truth. Her sister had died of pneumonia in that guest room. She was 6 years old and loved singing lullabies. They locked the room after her death and never used it again. But sometimes, she said late at night, you can still hear her singing. Late at night, I swear I can hear that same lullaby. And occasionally, when I wake up in the morning, The bear isn't quite where I left it the night before. So, yeah, that's my story. Call it a ghost story, call it grief, call it whatever you want. But I know what I experienced in that house, and sometimes when I visit my grandparents, I still hear that humming coming from the guest room at the end of the hall.